What's going on, guys? TJ here with Daily Grind Fantasy Sports to bring you tonight's 7-game NBA slate. Was supposed to be an 8-game NBA slate, but we did just get news around a half hour ago that the Chicago-Toronto game has been postponed due to health and safety reasons. So, was an 8-game slate. Now we only have 7 games to talk about. So let's go ahead and dive right in. I want to go over the slate as a whole. I want to talk about ownership, guys that are carrying some chalk as of now, and some good tournament plays that you can be looking at. Obviously, everything's going to change throughout the day, but let's go ahead and take a look at the current injury news that we do have. For the Wizards in the Celtics game, we have Raul Neto questionable. We have Ish Smith out. If Raul Neto is out, that's 24 minutes to be dispersed throughout some of those other backup guards. So that's somewhat significant, but not really. In the Celtics, we have Jaylen Brown currently questionable. That would be huge for guys like Kemba, guys like Tatum. That would get big usage bumps if JB sits. Obviously, we have Langford and Marcus Smart that are currently out. For the Knicks in Detroit, we have Taj Gibson questionable. We have Alfred Payton questionable. We have Mitchell Robinson out. If Alfred Payton is out, that obviously gives boost to guys like Derrick Rose, who would start, Alec Burks quickly, and Frank as well. So that's something we really need to keep an eye on. For Detroit, same situation that we've been seeing. Blake Griffin out, Killian Hayes, Jao Okafor, and DeLon Wright. For Memphis, just Grayson Allen out. Jaren Jackson is yet to play this year until he's irrelevant. With Houston, we have Dante Exum, we have Oladipo, and Christian Wood. So definitely some usage boost there. In Houston, to guys like John Wall, Eric Gordon. Golden State, fully healthy. We have the Lakers with AD still out. LeBron is going to play tonight. Atlanta and Miami, definitely some interesting injury news here that we're going to have to monitor throughout the day. We have Trae Young questionable, and we have Tyler Hero questionable. Obviously, Tyler Hero did not play last game, so we need to wait and see if either of those guys are going to be good to go to play. In terms of Atlanta, we have Reddish doubtful, Bogdy, Dunn, Hunter, so same injury report that we've been seeing the last week. Miami, it looks like just Avery Bradley is out. Bam and Vincent look like they're going to be good to go. Obviously, Bam would be huge. Vincent kind of irrelevant. And then obviously pending Tyler Hero. Phoenix and Minnesota, Saric should be good to go tonight. And then for Minnesota, we have Malik Beasley and D'Lo out. Charlotte, we have Zeller questionable. We know Zeller sat last game against Golden State, so that's something we want to keep an eye on as well. Gordon Hayward looks like he is probable. I just want to double check that. Yeah, he is probable. Okay, so Gordon Hayward going to be good to go tonight against the Kings. We have Devonta Graham and Caleb Martin out. And then for Sacramento, we have Halliburton and Hassan Whiteside both out. So that's the injury report that we're currently looking at, guys. So let's go ahead and jump right into some guys that are carrying some high ownership. Right now we're looking at Jay Crowder at 4,500, showing 34.4% owned. We have John Wall at 8,300, showing 32.7% ownership. Derrick Rose, so a lot of people assuming that Alfred Payton is going to sit tonight at 5,700, showing 30% ownership. Kemba Walker, 6,800 in a really good matchup against Washington, showing 28% ownership. And then Buddy Hield in an uptick matchup for Sacramento and Charlotte at 6,100, showing 26.6% ownership. I'm not going to lie, I was a little surprised by that. So as you guys can see, this is what the ownership picture is looking at right now. So let's go ahead and jump game to game and see what we can kind of look at in terms of ownership. In this first 7 o'clock game, we are looking at Kemba Walker, who is showing 28% ownership. Obviously, if Jaylen Brown is out, that is going to give significant usage bumps to guys like Kemba, to guys like Tristan Thompson, to Jason Tatum. And really, that would be the only guys that I'm looking at. Maybe Javonte Green would start for Jaylen Brown or Nesmith. I doubt Nesmith starts. It would probably be Javonte Green, but I don't have interest in there. The only guys I would be interested in if JB does sit would be Kemba and Tatum. And when we're looking at Kemba Walker, he does show as the best rated point per dollar, for the Boston Celtics now, with just Marcus Smart and Langford out. We're having him at a 5.5 almost a value, 37.26 points. He gets almost a 1% usage bump with Marcus Smart off the floor, 1.12 fantasy points per minute. So I do actually like Kemba for cash tonight in a really good matchup against Washington. I think you can definitely go there at 6,800. He's definitely on my radar right now. Moving on to the Knicks and Detroit game, obviously on the Knicks side of the ball, if we do have Alfred Payton out with Mitchell Robinson, I am going to like a guy like Derrick Rose. Where are they on my sheet? Did I go past him? I did. So Derrick Rose, as you can see, gets a 0.3 usage bump with Mitchell Robinson and with Mitchell Robinson and Alfred Payton off the floor. 1.12 fantasy points per minute for Derrick Rose, 25.6% value. We've seen how well he's played in these last 3 games that he has started. So I definitely do like Derrick Rose tonight. If Alfred Payton is out, we have him as a 5.9 value, 33.7 DraftKings points. I'm not worried about the back-to-back last night. I still think he plays 30 minutes if this game stays competitive. I don't like this matchup as a whole between Detroit and the New York Knicks. If we look in terms of pace of play this year, they are 2 teams that are toward the bottom. We have the Knicks currently last in pace of play. Detroit 25th. So 2 teams that like to play at a little bit of a slower pace, but I do think you can go to Derrick Rose in terms of cash. And let's go ahead and look at this Houston pitcher with no Oladipo and no Christian Wood on the floor. We're looking at John Wall, who gets almost a 4% usage bump, 1.25 fantasy points per minute, 35% total usage. We have him pegged for 42.86 DraftKings points, so I do like him in this up-pace matchup against Memphis, who are very bad at covering opposing guards. He is carrying a lot of ownership in terms of cash, so I do think you can go there tonight. Obviously love him without Oladipo on the floor. Eric Gordon is also an intriguing play at 6K, showing 23.3% ownership, 2.4% usage bump, a 1 fantasy point per minute, 27.5% total usage. So second highest on the team, as you can obviously see, behind John Wall. We have him pegged for almost 5.46 value, 32.77 DraftKings points. So I do like Eric Gordon as well. Sterling Brown at 3,900 carrying some ownership too. We got Daniel House. We got Nwaba. All these guys I think are going to make for intriguing plays. I think John Wall, Eric Gordon are going to be really good cash options. Sterling Brown is going to be a cheap option as well here. 0.82 fantasy points per minute. We have him pegged for 20.25 DraftKings points. That's really all you need him to get to at 3,900. So I'll have some interest there. But right now I think John Wall and Eric Gordon are the 2 guys that I am looking at for cash. If you do go to Sterling Brown or Daniel House, I don't hate it. It is a really good matchup here against Memphis. Moving on in terms of cash, guys, I do want to touch base on Phoenix, obviously, with Jay Crowder at 4,500. He is showing some really good ownership, and I think he's a really good cheap option tonight. He does show as the best value in terms of Phoenix on the sheet. 4,500 projected 30 minutes. He's a 0.84 fantasy point per minute. He should start, and if he does play 30 minutes, if this game can stay competitive somehow against Minnesota, who's coming off a back-to-back, we have him pegged for 25.2 DraftKings points. I do like him as a cheap option tonight. Devin Booker at 8K also showing some ownership in a really good matchup against Minnesota. I do get worried that they do blow him out. Minnesota did play last night. But if it does stay competitive, Book at 8K, I mean, that is really cheap. He's taken 24 shots in each of his last 2 games since the All-Star snub. But I guess he's in now technically because of AD's injury. So if he can get hot, start hitting some shots in a really good matchup against Minnesota, I can get behind that. I just don't know if I'll be going there. I know this is probably going to be more of a mid-tier type build tonight, especially if you're starting builds with like John Wall. If you're going to guys like Kemba Walker, I think Devin Booker kind of fits that mold a little bit, so I can definitely get behind that. And then in the Charlotte-Sacramento game, Buddy Hield at 6,100. We have De'Aaron Fox at 8,600. A lot of people going to these guys because Halliburton is out. In terms of the sheet, none of these guys really rate out too well. Actually, Buddy Hield does rate out the best at 6,100. He's a 0.86 fantasy point per minute with no Halliburton on the floor. Basically a 5.1 value. We've been pegged for almost 31 DraftKings points. So I don't know if I would trust Buddy Hield, honestly. I never really have confidence playing him ever. He's such a streaky shooter, and he's been really poor this year shooting threes. So I'm not too interested in him, but if the ownership's going to be there, I do get the matchup. This is the highest over-under that we do have on the slate right now, almost at 240. So getting some exposure to this game is going to be huge. So if I can get a volume shooter like Buddy Hield and he can get hot, I can definitely see myself rostering him in cash. De'Aaron Fox would obviously be the guy that I want to get to at 8,600. And again, I think he fits that build. If you are going a mid-tier, I'm assuming you can get guys like Fox, John Wall, and then if you are going to, Derrick Rose, Kemba Walker, and then who else was I just? Oh, Devin Booker. I feel like that might be a pretty common build tonight, but something we'll have to keep an eye on. So I will have interest in that late game just because the over/under is going to be huge. So that's kind of it for cash. Let's go ahead and take a look at some tournament plays as well. In terms of the sheet, in terms of tournaments, I do like Jared Vanderbilt. I don't think he is carrying too high of ownership again. No, 2% owned, a really tough matchup, obviously, against Phoenix, but he rates out really well with all those guys off the floor, being Malik Beasley and D'Lo. Looked really good last night as well, starting at 4,600, projected 24 minutes. He gets a 2% usage bump. He's a 1.04 fantasy point per minute. I think he's a really good cheap option, maybe a pivot off of a guy like Jake Crowder. Excuse me. So I do like him in tournaments. Cat is somebody that I'm going to be interested in as well at 10-1 in terms of tournaments. Trey Young and Clint Capella, always have love for those guys. They always rate out really well on the sheet. It is a really tough matchup against Miami. So, again, I'm going to have interest in those guys in terms of tournaments and not cash. Moving down the list, Bradley Beal at 9,600, 7% ownership. Sign me up. I absolutely love that. Jason Tatum at 9,100. I fall for him every single game. I just can't help it. He pisses me off, but 12% ownership. I do have some interest there. LaMelo Ball, 8,800. That price tag's really expensive, obviously, but it's a fantastic matchup against Sacramento, so I don't hate it. Chris Paul, 7,800. Love that price tag for him in an up-paced matchup against Minnesota, so I can get behind him in terms of tournaments. Gordon Hayward carrying some ownership. He burned a lot of people against Golden State, so I think everybody's going to be off of him, but I wouldn't mind taking a chance there. Ja Morant, 22% ownership. Honestly, is cash viable at 7,200. I do like him in this matchup against Houston. Doesn't really rate out too well on the sheet, but just passes the eye test in what could be a competitive up-paced matchup there. Harrison Barnes played fantastic against Golden State. Got a $1,000 price increase from that matchup against Detroit where he played 40 minutes. So ownership still a little bit low there on a guy like Harrison Barnes, so I can get behind that. Let me go back to the sheet and see who actually pops here. Derrick Rose obviously is going to be a cash option as long as Peyton is out. DSJ actually shows decent on the sheet. 2% usage bump, 1.07 fantasy point per minute. Not carrying too high ownership, so I don't mind him as a tournament play, but again, I hate that matchup as a whole. Ja Morant, like I just talked about, he is carrying ownership. I'm sorry I didn't mention him as cash play, guys, but he is definitely viable. He's a 1.22 fantasy point per minute, 28.3% total usage. Justice Winslow also looks decent on the sheet as well. I talked about Trey. I talked about Capella. I talked about Cat, Anthony Edwards. I mean, the guy just shoots. Did it last night. He ended up hitting value at 35 DraftKings points last night. I think he was 6,300. Got the price increase. Let me just double check that real quick. Anthony Edwards on the back-to-back. Was he 6,500 last night? This is so slow. 63. Okay, I was right. 32 minutes, took 22 shots. If he's going to continue to take those shots with D'Lo and Beasley out, like I love him for tournaments, especially at that ownership. I hate the matchup, but just thinking in terms of tournament plays. So yeah, that's going to wrap up my synopsis on today's 7-game slate. Again, was going to be an 8-game slate, but now it is only 7 games. So guys, if you could, please like, subscribe to our channel, smash that like button. It means the world to Matt and I. Hope you guys like this breakdown. We will see you later tonight for the live stream. Matt and I excited to break that down for you guys. Probably go live around like 5:30ish. So be on the lookout for that in case you don't get a notification. I know they've been a little wonky lately, but bear with us. So with all that being said, guys, good luck today, and let's cash.